4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 9th, 2019 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. As a matter of formality, we have two issues. One is that we have a recorder here, and we'd ask that you come forward, ask questions, make comments, say anything you'd like, but just identify yourself and use a microphone. And the second order of formality is that we introduce ourselves.
Hans Van Lingen.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
John Kiernan.
Arthur Doyle.
Gerard Burke.
Wendy Garpet.
And Steve Ibis, Conservation Agent.
All right, first on the agenda is request for determination of applicability at 1726 Canton Avenue. Welcome, Jack, would you identify yourself? And
Yes, my name is Jack Dawley. I am the president, CEO, owner of Northland Residential. We have a contract to purchase the Carberry property on Canton Ave. We own a piece of it presently. We've been before the town for the past 3 years through a rezoning and a special permit process for a cluster townhouse condominium project, which we did get an approval for. Prior to starting the projects, and one of the conditions of the permit with the Milton Historical Commission is to retain and relocate to an abutting piece of property, aka the Walker property, which abuts the Carberry property to the Blue Hill side, which is kind of southwest. Mr. Walker has a small equestrian, residential equestrian facility on the abutting property, and asked if he could have this building. The Milton Historical Commission was desirous of it being retained as opposed to demolished, and a compromise was reached that it would be retained and relocated from the site to his site. So the building, a corner of the building sits within 100 feet of an intermittent stream, which this commission reviewed 2+ years ago, that traverses the site to the north from the Blue Hill Reservation property, and therefore it requires that I come before you. Given that the building sits in essentially an unwooded open field area, is up gradient from the intermittent stream, and I'll remind the commission members or inform those that aren't aware that the intermittent stream is probably as wide or less wide than the table that I am sitting at. It is what we call a channelized stream, meaning it had been walled with stone, vertical stone on either side of it and along the bottom, and it runs, like I said, intermittently. You can effectively step over it in almost all instances. The wetland resource or growth really doesn't expand much beyond the top of the vertical walls of the channelized stream. So there's not, if you will, a marsh or a wetland resource up gradient in the vicinity of the carriage house as it's known. This is shown on the plan behind you on the screen. And so what we want to do, or what Mr. Walker wants to do, and I have a contract with Mr. Walker, is he's hired a building mover that will break the building down into 3 pieces, lift it off of its existing foundation, and slide it away from the stream, down the site, across the site to his site, which on this map would be off to the right. The route of its movement would be not down the center of the property to Canton Ave, along Canton Ave, and back up Mr. Walker's driveway, namely because there's a stone wall at the bottom of both Walker's driveway and Carberry's driveway that would have to be impacted, and it's a scenic road, and we have wires. So the idea is that we could utilize the existing driveway to bring it down to where the new subdivision or condominium road would be built, travel along that road, and pick up an existing driveway that exists and slide it down. This is something that he wants to do after I take title to the property, which is scheduled to occur in early August, and he would start to break down the building immediately thereafter, and I would rough in the section of the road sort of immediately below what is called the Walcott House. That's an existing house right there, where whoever's using the mouse to the right there, that road exists. I didn't bring a pointer. That road exists. The piece that needs to be put in place is the section immediately below what is labeled up there as Walcott House. There are no endangered species, thank you. There's an existing driveway right here. It goes all the way down to Canton Ave. This doesn't exist. We thought about bringing it around Walcott House. It would involve more tree cutting in this zone, which we agreed with the planning board in a different conversation that we didn't want to do. This is all cleared up in here. There's an existing driveway here. There's lawn.
Where is the stream on this map? Can you
Right
point
there.
out? Just over there.
Right there. Yep. So no endangered species, no vernal pools, no trees to have to be cut to affect this work. No excavation. It can be hay baled, or we don't use hay bales anymore. We use
Silt
socks. But it can be, limited work can be described here. In some facility. It's all going to work from the right-hand side of the image that you're looking here. So that is hence the application that we have here. We're asking for an RDA as opposed to an order of conditions, given the light impact and scope of the work. And when we will ultimately have to file an order of conditions or an NOI and notice of intent for the overall project, as there are other resources that are impacted. There's a wetland crossing over here to get across the channelized stream. There's a wetland crossing above here to get across the channelized stream. But those are wholesale different, not only components and complexity of review than moving this building. So we wanted to bifurcate. We want to bifurcate this from that discussion. If it's not an RDA, I will file an NOI unique to this particular aspect of the project.
So
with
for clarification purposes, and this is really just formality, but, so the Walcott Woods Lane does not exist? The ring road that is...
Presently, it does not.
Okay.
Right here. That has to be, this is part of my prospective development.
Okay.
And that's called Walcott Woods Lane, and we will construct this part to
two
get the building over
crossings.
there, yes.
Okay. I think it would be helpful to not have that on this RDA plan.
Okay?
Because I don't think we're...
Yeah, it kind of, we tried, frankly, I tried to scrub out as much of the prospective development from this application as I could.
Sure.
So as not to mix
Yeah,
metaphors.
considering, just to make sure that, what we're approving is the movement of the,
Okay?
I don't know if that's unreasonable or not to everyone
No,
else.
it's a good point. Good point.
Secondly, at the end of the narrative, there's a description about the foundation of the building and how's that going to be treated. It says that it's going to be removed. Is it far below ground? Is it?
There,
You're talking about the old foundation.
The old foundation, yes, the
excuse me.
carriage barn.
So on the top, if I can ask people to look at the screen, on the top of the building where my pointer is pointing, there is a full foundation from here across and down. It is on I call it a sub-foundation. It's basically, there's no below-grade foundation. It's a slab-on-grade or something to that effect. This was a carriage house, so this section was really where carriages and/or horses were stalled, and this section was like a tack room. If that makes any sense? We can withdraw the excavation or the carving out of the foundation from this application and move it over to the overall RDA, NOI/order if you want. You know, there are prospective homes being built in this zone that you will need to review before I build them. There is one proposed right there.
In that exact same area?
Yeah, and if we looked at the model behind you, that big thing behind you is the Walcott Woods development. I could show you where we are, relatively speaking, to all of this.
But what is your concern about a house, the foundation in
It just,
particular?
I mean, you've provided some very good detail on the process of relocating the building itself, I don't know what you call it, superstructure or the above-ground structure, but what remains is the foundation.
Yeah, we were gonna carve out the foundation and then, you know, grade it off in preparation for
Having-
a new building that I would need an order for to be built.
Okay.
So I basically, you know, blend the ground into existing grades.
So you'd come back with an NOI?
I have to come back with a wholesale NOI for the overall project.
So it'd be a wholesale NOI for the whole project, or for the project as a whole, and then individual house lots would come back?
Well, it's,
I'm trying
as
to
it's,
just
as it's a
anticipate
condominium, there aren't lots, so it would be an NOI for the entire
For the
47.9 acres, yeah, development. And each building site would be part of your review,
Okay.
as well as 2 road crossings, stream crossing.
So it's a stone foundation, probably,
Fieldstone.
It is stone, yes.
and probably 100 years of horse manure and everything else as well?
I haven't seen any host maneuver because I don't know. I mean, the carriage house has been occupied as a residence since the early 90s, as I'm told. One of the Carberry daughters lived in it
Yes.
until
Yeah.
fall, I think, of last year.
I've got 2 questions, Jack, and I recognize the jurisdictional issues.
Yep.
I can see the line here. But when you're coming down here, irrespective of the new ring road, this is still a pathway in, correct?
Yes, yes.
And are you taking down a lot of trees?
That actually is quite wide in there, so no. And there are a number of significant, there's on the lower side in this cluster of trees, if I had an aerial, there are a couple of sugar maples, really magnificent sugar maples, and then right in here, there's a copper beech, big copper beech, somewhere right in here. But in this, for the most part, if I walked you through that, the surface of the road is probably maybe a little less wide than this room, but then there are these sort of, I don't know what you call it, grass shoulders? Grass lawn?
Swards. Sward, S-W-A-R-D,
Swards. I don't know that term.
adjacent to a roadway.
All right.
Grass.
And my second question goes to this area here. Is this was there a land
Yes.
swap or conveyance here?
There hasn't been yet, but part of the planning board and the negotiations with the Walker family was to sort of who's got the computer? Can we go back a slide maybe? and
Sure.
See what else is.
Absolutely.
Is there one before that? Okay, stop.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So this is Mr. Walker
I'll make it
right here.
larger.
Okay, so this is Mr. Walker's property right in here.
There you go. See it easier.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Mr. Walker lives here. he accesses his property, and the only way to access his property is an existing driveway that comes up here and rolls into his property and then continues up to what is known as the Walcott House. He has an easement to get to his property, and so something that he has been desirous of is to control his driveway in fee as opposed to via easement. So at a late hour in the planning process, we had exactly 1 acre of extra land within the confines of the zoning. The zoning said we needed a minimum of 45 acres, and we had 46 point something. So we created what is known as parcel, I think it's A or something, and it's this funny shaped thing that will be annexed to his existing parcel. He doesn't control all of his driveway because we couldn't give him all of the land, but he picked up an acre of land and this little hammerhead at the top where this building can go. And he would, when I close, my obligation when I close, simultaneously with my closing, is just to convey that parcel A to him and convey a bill of sale on the carriage house for $10 and a license to move it for $10. You have to have compensation in these agreements. All of that will accrue to him the day I close, and then I have an obligation to open up that Walcott Woods lane in that particular area so we can get from point A to point B.
All right, that all makes sense to me. But here's my concern, and I recognize the limitation of our jurisdiction.
Yep.
But we went back a second time when we did the original delineation, and some of the board members, the commission members were not there, some were. But we went back here twice in this area here. There's a culvert right here under the driveway.
It's right. It's actually right.
Yeah.
It's right in there.
Correct.
And there was a suggestion, I think it was Mr. Walker's suggestion, that this was a resource area. We determined that it was not. But nevertheless, there was a channel coming here, and from a drainage perspective, that barn is going right smack dab in the middle of where that drainage channel was. Are you, or is he perhaps planning on diverting that drainage? Because it's coming right down here where my pen is.
Yeah, it parallels the existing road. You're right. It parallels the existing road, and then there's this, probably a 8 or 10 inch, maybe 12 inch culvert that crosses right in here.
Isn't there another culvert that crosses his driveway access right here?
I don't know.
I seem to remember
There was one here.
plastic PVC.
Yes.
Correct.
There. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, right there.
I can't speak to what he's
I remember.
doing, to be, I don't know. My agreement is to convey the land, convey the building as a piece of personal property, and provide him with a temporary license to relocate it across my property. He'll have to apply for a building permit to A, move it, and B, build a foundation and site grade and stick it where he wants to stick it, and how, if you want to condition my RDA, it'll run to him, that whatever condition that he comes back. But the grading of that corner, that little hammerhead, will be impacted, and the flow of drainage,
Boy.
because it's downhill. As we know, the site goes like this.
All right, well, I acknowledge that we made a determination back in 2016 that it was not jurisdictional, but we're also conscious of the drainage capacity of any building. Something's going to happen. The other thing is that I think Mr. Walker was concerned with this beech grove here and cutting trees. I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of tree cutting in this area.
Yeah, the beach is up gradient. We're down into that sort of primeval, sort of pitch pine,
You're right.
Eastern white pine, actually.
eastern white, kind of junky stuff, and sort of succession growth. But there will be clearings, yes.
That's the developer speaking.
Well,
Yeah,
again, I don't think we have jurisdiction, we already made that determination. But, boy, talk about asking for trouble, putting the right smack in the middle of a drainage channel. Scary.
So one other question, can you describe the concrete retaining wall that's on the side there, that's getting included?
Remind me what you're,
Back at the original site where it's currently located, there's a retaining wall on the
South side.
southern side, south wall.
It's that rectangle that is
Right.
right adjacent to the top.
So on the south side,
South side, yeah.
it would be to the right of the screen, the south.
Right beside
Right
the
of the
wood
screen,
carriage.
It's right here. This is right here.
It's really east.
Uh,
I think it's mentioned somewhere in the narrative.
remove concrete retaining wall.
Trying to understand
Yeah.
what that retains actually, and, it seems like it just looks like what's the purpose of that wall? What's it?
I have to honestly tell you, I don't remember. I've probably walked around that building 200 times and it's not ringing a bell. I don't recall. I'd have to go back out and look at it.
Steve, can you bring up the picture of the barn again?
Sure,
See if we can just
absolutely.
see.
Yep.
The reason I'm asking is just to make sure it's not a
No,
structure that held anything.
fair question, I just don't remember what its purpose was. I can't picture it in my head.
I don't think it's on this. No, it's really not, but I'll bring it back anyway for you.
While he's looking for that, when you take out the foundation, putting aside the retaining wall, and you're going to stabilize it, is that a temporary stabilization until you put in the foundation of the
Yeah.
new?
It's right in there.
And what
It'll be-
what is the stabilization?
Probably be a most likely it would be dirty loamed and seeded with a conservation mix. You
Doesn't
know,
look like it's retaining anything.
ryegrass and-
Doesn't look
That's
like
why
it's up
it's
there.
we just so on a road.
So
Right.
And it's not that steep
sort of sits under the
a
flag.
site. Yeah, it's not shown there. I'd have to go look or take a picture, sir. I don't remember what that structure is. Isn't it a lovely, lovely building?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? I think we might want to ask for a stabilization plan to be included as one of our conditions, because it's probably going to be a year or so before you're actually into the construction of the new homes.
Yes.
Is that correct? All right.
I do have a question. I'm curious about the timing of the moving of the structure, since it is close to an intermittent stream, and there are certain times of year that,
Yeah, my guy, he wants, the agreement stipulates that everything was done by Thanksgiving. That's my
Of this
agreement. Of this year.
okay.
That's our agreement.
That puts a lot on him to get.
Puts a lot on him and me, yeah. We wanted it out of our hair and Mr. Walker out of our hair.
Jack, for you, that was pretty diplomatic.
I've been doing this for a long time. Meaning this project.
Are there abutters or members of the public that have a question and wish to make a comment? Any other thoughts? My only condition would be to put in writing, in our condition, if it's a negative determination with conditions,
Yes.
because it really is moving away from our jurisdiction, and as many concerns as I have as to where it's going and the drainage there, it's not jurisdictional for us. I think Mr. Walker, I know he's aware of it because he was represented with not only council, but wetland scientists when we inspected that area. And that was a big issue, that drainage area, because he thought it was a resource area. But again, it seems to be outside of our jurisdiction.
And by the way, I did peer review it for you as well. That area.
That's right, I did.
Yeah. That's where I remember the white plastic PVC pipe.
Right. Right. All right, so is there a consensus or any concerns with issuing a negative determination with, my condition is just stabilizing the area of the foundation that's been removed?
Well, also the updated plan to remove the ring road.
Yes, correct?
And then also a stabilization plan.
That's right.
Accompanied with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that was my concern, the stabilization plan, because it's going to be
Conditions.
a year or two.
And I think any equipment that is used for this has to be probably in Mr. Walker's area. I mean, this is heavy-duty moving, a lot of heavy equipment to move that.
Oh, for sure. But that would be our normal, we'd add our
That'd be in
normal
the-
condition that there's no storage within a jurisdictional area. But it's only a portion of the barn that you can see the 100-foot line going through
Correct.
the barn. So the equipment would have to be stored, any refueling would be outside of our jurisdictional area.
That's the point.
But with those three conditions? Anything
Not to
else?
throw a wrench in, have you done any sort of ESA on the site, or did it require an environmental site assessment?
We've done an ESA on the entire 47 acres, and we're clean.
Okay, so there was no wrecks, no,
Nothing.
okay, then I'm good.
Do we have that? We would,
Do
we
you
will.
guys? I doubt anyone, I haven't given it to anyone at the town. I have it in my due diligence, package that we did that 3 years ago.
Okay.
Give it
And
to
so the
someone.
other reason I asked was again because of that retaining wall area,
Right.
to see if that was flagged as.
Was not, there's an oil tank in the basement.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, you said,
There's an oil tank in the basement of this building.
That's
above ground.
Above ground, yes, yes. It's freestanding,
standard residential.
standard 250 gallon,
275.
275 tank in the existing basement of the structure presently.
All right. What, you'd have to have, I don't know how the
Doesn't even
removal
require-
above ground, what's that?
It doesn't even require, well, it requires a plumbing permit, I think. That's about it. I mean, it doesn't really,
As long as it's
require
above
any-
ground.
For residential, the rules are so.
Okay. Is there anything else to add to the RDA? Is there a motion? Yes.
There was just one discrepancy I noticed. You had said that it was a fieldstone foundation, and in the narrative, it does say concrete. And Hans, I know you were concerned about the foundation, so I didn't know
No,
if
it's fieldstone.
that made any difference.
It's fieldstone.
I don't think so.
Okay, good catch, though. So with that, is there a motion to issue a negative determination with the conditions as stated and recorded by Steve? Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, negative determination? Okay.
With the slight permission of the second applicant, provided we have 3 minutes, would the board be willing to bring up the plant list for Brook Road
Oh,
matter as a second item of tonight, as opposed to the third item of the night?
Right, that would be fine. Permission granted from number 2? Thank you very much. So number 3 on the agenda is order of conditions 374 Brook Road. We actually took this up at our last meeting, and the issue was to change from a list of non-native plants to a list of native plants, and I am comfortable deferring to the arborist among us.
They're fine, Jack. They're good enough. They're good enough. They're all native and, yeah, they should do just fine on the site. What do you think, Wendy? Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah. Good enough.
Steve, do you have a comment? You went from fine to okay, and
My comment, I do have a comment.
yes, so please, we invite it.
I note that a couple of them are not the original plants or the native plants. They are hybrids of the plants. Specifically, let me see, what was it? It was the Iris glabra compacta, and the Juniperus virginiana, which is red cedar. The other one was inkberry, and they were just hybrids, that's all. Judith, you were okay with that?
I am, yeah.
Fine, then I'm okay with it. The inkberries, these are, the first one was an inkberry, and it doesn't grow the 10 feet of the normal inkberries. It
No.
grows to about 2.5, 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah.
And the other is a smaller red cedar as well, eastern red cedar. That's all.
Okay.
It's not a, so the inkberry will stop growing at a certain size, as will the red cedar.
But the other ones are nice, you know, the swamp azalea is great, and the clethra and chokeberry.
Yes,
Serviceberry, it's nice to see Amalachia, so.
yes, very nice to see that on the list.
Okay, thank you.
How about the, well, we should vote to accept it, but how'd the wall of the stream do?
Yeah, I was there about a half an hour ago. It looks the same as it
Same.
did when we started.
You were going to say great.
Same. All we care about is same, right?
Yes,
Right.
you are correct. All right, fair enough. Then is there a motion to accept the change in the plant list as part of the order of conditions and to issue the order?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any comments from the public before we actually vote on this? Hearing none, is there any discussion? All in favor to accept this change to the order of conditions? Done. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thanks for coming in.
Who would like these
I
for
will,
the,
please.
in your pointers right
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
And number 2 on the agenda is a request for modification order conditions at 151 Woodland Road. And thank you for your courtesy in going out of order.
And I'll get one of those up on the screen in a moment.
And I had the toughest time figuring out what's the difference between the June and the July plan. June and July.
The July 2 plan is the June plan overlaid on the Hannigan plan.
I know that it said overlay,
Yes,
but I couldn't see it, so that's my problem. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Introduce yourself and then tell us what we're doing.
I'm Josh Green with Merrill Engineers.
I'm Jack Sullivan. Paul Sullivan was my brother. He and his family's asked me to step in and help him finish up some of the projects that he's working on. This is one of them.
Please extend our condolences to his family, to your family. Thank you for coming in. So, tell us.
I can talk about earlier. I've been involved for a few months, and Bob Hannigan has done a number of notice of intent plans. There seems to be a fair amount of confusion about them. He's been here most recently in March, where he presented a plan that we're currently working with. It's a smaller footprint. It's a 2-car garage versus the previous plans, which were 3-car garages. Plan in March showed a side entrance garage. He came back in April to submit a plan similar to this, which again is the same foundation, same house, only with the garage entry on the front. Bob inadvertently submitted the same plan that he had previously submitted, so we're here tonight to get the right plan submitted. And Josh will...
So I just want to take a second to point out what the differences are. I know it's a little hard on the overlay to see, but the main difference is basically the previous building went right up to the 25-foot buffer, where we've moved it back off of it. Relating to the building, the other difference is just a slight change in the orientation, which I think you can see on the overlay plan. It's just turned a little differently. And then the final main difference is just the driveway is coming into the front versus the side. And that's really the major differences to the building and the construction being done in that area.
But that's what confused me, because when I looked at I was looking for the movement away from the 25-foot, because I know the original one was touching it.
Yeah, it's right on it. So if you look back behind the proposed one, you can see the old plans building.
Once we moved the driveway
Showed it.
front from, rather than the side, we picked up the 20 feet to move it away from it.
Almost on it.
Oh, it's color, there's no line there.
Now, down the overlay, it's a little tough to see.
Okay. Well, I'll say.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. I just wanted to,
I get it, okay.
But we
Because it
approved,
looks the same.
John, didn't we approve this plan the last time? Didn't we, with the driveway, with the grass strip in the middle?
Oh, the driveway, no, they're changing the driveway up here.
Right.
The old one came around to the side.
Right.
And so
this-
now the front driveway, but yeah, our original concern was where the driveway comes in off of Woodland, and to make sure that the easement is still in place, but that appears to be still in place.
Yes, there'll actually be a new easement, I believe. John, correct?
Yeah, we'll be submitting a revised easement plan to be consistent with what we're showing you tonight.
But there will be an easement still, so it'll still remain under the same type of...
Okay. Because our original concern was that you not come back and go to 167 Woodland and have them come in and say, now we don't have any alternative, we've got to cut, we need a driveway. So that easement, and Bob Hannigan came in and represented, that's filed. So are you going to change that easement?
But Bob Hannigan presented the wrong plan.
No, we're talking about the easement, which is different. I mean, there
Oh,
was
the
a
original
plan that
easement.
was recorded, because when we first issued it, everybody forgot to record that easement. And that was the original problem, because of the wetlands in front of 167 Woodland. So we insisted that it be recorded, and Bob did. So there is on record in the Norfolk Registry of Deeds an easement.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It is different than the easement that we're proposing. And we'll be submitting a new easement.
So that might be a
When?
condition of the plan, or condition of any approval, that the easement be recorded before any work gets done on the site, any more work, I should say.
Right, but I thought the easement that we were originally concerned with, it was the one that allowed 167 Woodland to cross the piece of land that 167 is selling.
Yeah, that will still exist, because we have the two driveways shown on the plan. That's the intent of that easement, is to allow for that second driveway there.
To be split, but the 167 easement across the 151 land will still be in play.
Correct.
I mean, that's a condition of it. I mean, we went round and round on that.
Well,
That is a
it's-
fundamental predicate assumption here. That there's an easement for 167 to cross the land that they're subdividing. I mean, it's their land, but at one time, they were gonna try to sell it without the easement, and then they would have to cut through a wetland. And that would cut us off from the ability to say, no, there's an alternative means. Because if you have a limited project under the Wetlands Protection Act, you have to look at alternative remedies. And you've got an alternative remedy now. If you sell the land, then you could come back in and say, oh, we don't have any alternative remedies, we don't own the land. So that's why that easement was so important to us, because you're not going to do a limited project, crossing of a wetland that we had previously designated.
There's going to be an easement just like before. 167's in agreement with it. It works for both parties, and we'll record a new easement.
So the easement should be shown on the conservation plan.
It is shown
It is
the
shown
plan.
on there, the proposed one.
It is?
Yeah,
This
so
is going to be the split driveway, right? There's like a-
Correct, and you can see we're holding one side of the original easement, the side closest to the proposed house, so the new lot.
Right.
And then it'll just be a new side, just to allow for that driveway where it's not as tight. You can see the dashed line above that other driveway.
There's a dashed line parallel to the other driveway on the north
It's right here, if you look at the
Side.
screen.
shore.
That dashed line right here?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Where is it on the other side?
The other side is the existing one. It's a little hard because it's the existing line, but it is.
Can you point it out?
My best try. All right, so you can kind of see it. The best point where you can see it is in this area. If you look at the plan, you can see it a little better. There's a dashed line right in there.
Yeah.
It basically comes up and then shoots over somewhere in that area. You lose it behind this hatch that's on the drawing.
But you're talking about the proposed driveway for 151? Or are you talking
No,
about?
just, we didn't want to mess with the easement any more than we had to. We didn't want to change it. We wanted to keep it as the original one. So that side's staying the same because it still suits the purpose. But because that driveway is changing its shape just a little bit, where this is the original easement right here,
Yeah.
that driveway is slightly outside of it, so we just wanted to change it to allow for that driveway.
So the new easement will follow the dotted line as opposed to the solid line? That's
The
a
old,
question.
the old easement on this side is
Yeah.
right here, and it goes straight up to the
Oh, I
property.
see. So you're actually saying proposed driveway and utility easement?
Correct, and that's just, on this side is the only side that is changing. So it's just, instead of going straight down right there, it's just gonna have this little leg over here.
Okay, might I suggest that what we'd call the bottom line be somehow highlighted on the plan better?
Happy to do that.
May I suggest that?
Yes.
That would make sense for everybody.
For me, for sure. I can't find it.
That would be the southerly line. We call it the
Now,
southerly.
with this new driveway arrangement, are you adding any pavement at all, or what is the square footage?
As far as what, sorry?
The driveway that now goes in the different direction, the entrance to the garage itself.
I'm not sure of the square footage exactly. I believe going off the old plan, it is roughly the same size as the old one.
So the paved area in the driveway is roughly the same as it was before?
Correct. Because it's just, instead of going in, you had more pavement on the side, whereas now you have slightly more on the front, so it's probably less. I can't speak to the exact numbers right now.
And you remember, this footprint is substantially reduced?
Yes.
From the
Yes.
prior one?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that, but it's contingent upon keeping that easement to 167 that's already recorded in the Registry of Deeds. I mean, I don't care if it's adjusted, I just want to make sure there's access for 167 before they sell the land and cut themselves off.
Yeah, I mean, it's recorded, it's there. We just wanted, just for the convenience of making sense with the driveway, we just wanted to alter it to fit that.
It's in the contract, too, with them, that easement is going to be in place. I mean, everybody wants it.
All right, that's a condition certainly of my approval, but I think overall it's good. You moved it further away from the 25-foot. Looks good to me. You reduced the footprint. I'm okay with modification. Any other questions? from
I
the
should
commission?
give the board an update. Last week, I was out there, and they had started wood cutting, tree cutting. So I stopped them from tree cutting and said, don't do anything more until we have an approved plan that's recorded. That's all.
Okay.
Good job.
Are there any questions from abutters or comments or members of the public? Any other questions or concerns with the commission?
I have another suggested condition, that the erosion controls be updated before any further work is done on the property. And then another condition saying there are some soil pads that were put there to locate a crane to do the wood cutting. They should come out before any other work is done as well.
Help me out. Come out
The soil
after the
pads.
wood,
Yes,
after the wood cutting.
after the wood cutting, that's
Okay.
correct.
To be removed before any excavation is done?
Exactly, before any other site development,
Okay.
Why is that?
just to get it out of there so it doesn't go right down into the wetlands. Because it's not stabilized.
Well, it's all going to be backfilled. The grade-
Pardon?
That's part of the backfill, the grade in the front there. It's part of the grading.
It's actually quite close to the 25 at the very top, right in here. That's where it is. right in there. Is that correct? There's some there?
There is some there, yes.
That's right, there's some there, and there's some a little further back over in here, I think, presently.
Well, there's some up higher on 167's property,
Over here,
yeah.
yes, that's true. That's
Who was
true.
doing the tree cutting?
Pathfinder was doing it.
So when you say a soil pad, is it just a mound of,
Some soil, yeah, was just added to the area.
so how would you stabilize it?
The
Or,
only,
or would you move it?
I would move it out of there. If it's going to be part of the addition, the eventual, is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Will it be moved at all? Do you need to move it? Or is it,
I'm not sure. The contractor is doing another job in Milton, and he was generating fill. So he dropped a few loads over there.
right,
But we do need fill. And so I agree with you on the
erosion controls?
erosion control. It's been there a while. It's kind of beaten up.
We might want to see a plan from the contractor on how he's going to put the fill in, actually, if there's fill to be going in.
That's true, because it's fairly steep, and if you're here, if
Exactly,
you've got a soil pad here, you're not very far from
that's right.
this. So we'd want some kind of a plan to stabilize that.
Yeah, just a
extra
simple
fill.
plan from the contractors, so telling us where the soil's going, how much is going, and what the sequence is going to be. That's all.
I think erosion barriers.
Right. Well, the erosion barriers will come in first.
Right,
should-
but
but they
we,
should be included.
we also have a fill bylaw, and are you, do you have permission from the, who gives it? Is it the building commissioner or the, what's it?
Building department.
The building department does it, because if you bring in, what, 1,000 yards?
It's either 1,000 or 5,000 depending on the project, but I forget what this would fall under.
I thought it was 1,000 for
think
a
it's
single,
1,000.
single residence. So are you into that category for your fill?
I haven't done any fill calculations.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of fill coming in here, but, and we are, obviously, we do need to get a building permit, and we're also working with DPW on their permits. But before we can do anything, we need to get the right plan on record.
Yes.
So that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, well, I'm okay with, the changes made, as long as we preserve that easement, and as long as you're in compliance with whatever the building department requires in terms of the fill permit. And the changes suggested by Steve, and contingent upon some kind of a, and the contingency can be done by Steve. If he approves it, we can give him the authority to approve
Sure.
that the stabilization plan will be
So
appropriate.
that would be helpful.
Anything else?
No.
Any other questions from commissioners? Steve, do you have all of those
I've
contingencies?
got all of them down. Yep.
Okay, so this is actually, the question is whether or not this is a modification, and the issue is, we have two votes, actually. The first is whether or not this modification is a significant one. If it is, then they'd have to go back and file another notice of intent. If it's not a significant alteration, we can simply revise the plan and accept the revised plan as part of the original order of conditions. So the first one is whether or not this is a significant or not significant. So I
I'll
see-
move that it is not significant.
Second.
Second, any discussion on that? All in favor? All right, so it's not a significant modification. Now, the second vote is whether or not there's a motion to approve the modification to the order of conditions.
So moved.
Second?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, you're good to go. All right, and just get that, stabilization plan to Steve, and we're giving him the authority to say yay or nay. Okay?
Good.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in. Good.
All right, next on the agenda is number 4, enforcement order at 1 Carberry Lane. Is there anybody, there you are. All right.
I'm Nicole Salamini. My husband Mark and I own 1 Carberry Lane.
And can you tell us what you've done? I know the issue that we addressed at our last meeting, just a couple of weeks ago, was cutting of trees and removal of some of the detritus.
And John, you have the originals in the pile there, some
Pictures.
photographs
Yes, okay.
that were taken recently, I think,
Yes.
that you brought in.
Yes. Within, the last 2 weeks since we've had the last meeting, we did have our landscaper come and remove the debris. So I have before and after pictures that I sent to the commission.
It's not in that pile.
Steve, you sent them online.
Yes,
I did not, but maybe
Kathy
Kathy
did.
might have. But I didn't get a copy.
we're just gonna, we can hold everybody for a
But
minute.
there were pictures sent out from somebody,
Yes.
so
I
we
sent them
did
to,
get a
okay, I
chance.
sent them to Kathy Bowen, and then she
Oh,
was
she
supposed to
forwarded
send them
them.
on.
Did you
yeah.
find them?
Yes.
Good, good. Okay.
So there were 3 from before and 3 from after. And
All right, can you just kind of walk us through that? And
Absolutely.
if you just kind of hold them up for us.
Sure, I have,
No,
I have,
you've got 'em?
I have my own
Oh, good.
copies too, if you
Okay.
want to look at those. So before, you can see grass clippings. Up here is, the stream is down here, and the fence that is in our backyard is up top here. So more grass clippings, and these stake markers are the edge of our property. So you can see grass clippings here, and the stream is here, the fence is up top here. So then, these are after, we did clean up all the grass clippings. This is a better shot where you can see this is our fence, this is the stream.
Nice, thank you.
Lastly, there was a dead tree, we did not touch it, we left it there.
All right, and then,
With
what else? This
respect-
is what we asked you to do.
Yes,
And then we asked to think about,
plans for replanting, yes.
Exactly.
So I did have, I had 2 people come out these past 2 weeks, one arborist from Hartney Graymont and one landscaper come out, just to start to give me ideas on what is feasible in our property. The commission had suggested possibly 9 plantings. So in the area that is more of the natural landscape by the intermittent stream, we took a look at, I asked if they could tell me what we removed first. And they said it looked like all 5 were sugar maples. And so I thought I'd be happy to replant sugar maples. The landscaper that I spoke with said that he thought it was feasible to put 6 sugar maples in that area, which would all be alongside the intermittent stream. It's a whole grove of sugar maple trees, and it would just, blend into that natural landscape. We do not think we have room to put any more shade trees in our landscaped area or in the natural area, so we would be open to donating 3 trees to the tree bank, if that would be something that you would be interested in.
All right, so your total figure is 9?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll plant on your land how many?
6.
And donate 3?
sounds very reasonable to me.
Sounds very reasonable. You know,
We also
Nicole,
have the letter from Mr. Hunt.
I saw
Yes.
Thank you for getting that.
the letter from Mr. Hunt says, it was an emergency, obviously, but the last 2 sentences, it's my strongly held professional opinion that the safety of children and tree personnel supersedes conservation issues. It's for this reason.
They're not necessarily opposed.
They're not opposed.
That's right.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
I agree. If we had known that we needed to get approval, we would have gladly got approval for this. We have no interest in altering that landscape. And I'm happy to replenish what we took out. My only question of the commission is if you would allow us to plant these trees. I don't really, I'm not a tree expert, so how high are you looking for us to replant these type of trees, things
Well,
like
you know what
that?
I was thinking, Nicole? Because where your house is, you look down on the stream and
Yes.
this planting area. What would be awfully nice that you could do, instead of all sugar maples, if you put in like 2 American dogwoods, because the flowers are like on the top, they sort of, the flowers show, it would be beautiful. You'd look down in the springtime and you'd have an American dogwoods, the Cornus Florida.
Cornus Florida, yes.
You'd love it, so if you put in 2 of those instead of all sugar maples, and then the rest, and the sugar maples will be taller and the dogwoods are not as tall, but you'd love it, and they grow fairly quickly.
Would you want the American, does it matter which is close to the stream?
Wherever your
I don't know if
arborist says to
there's
put
preference or
them.
things like- okay,
Yeah,
okay.
wherever, but I think you'd really love
Sure.
that.
And I think you'll get advice as to the roots relative to the stream and which tree would be better closer.
Sure.
Which tree would be
I
further
can leave
away.
it up to
Exactly.
professionals.
But the question she asked was how big? And what's that stand?
For caliper, not height,
Right.
but width of the tree.
The dogwoods may be difficult to find
Yeah,
at
that caliper.
4-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2.5,
It would be-
2.5.
Yeah,
2.5 would be fine for
2.5 would
dogwoods.
be fine.
For the dogwoods, and what about
Yeah.
for the maple?
And the maple's a little bit larger,
Yeah.
3.5 at least.
Well, we've just gone from 4 to 2.5 to 3, 3.5. I just want to be consistent with,
Right.
Let's say the dogwood's 2 inches caliber, and
Sure.
say the maple's 3 inches. That way you'll be sure they'll
we're
survive.
changing. You're the uniformity person.
I know.
You just changed big time, because we've been between 3.5, we
Well,
pushed some
that-
people to 4.
Okay.
So let's stay with 3.5.
Say 3.5, okay, 3.5.
Dogwoods, 2,
2.5 for the
Sugars.
dogwoods, 3.5 for the...
2.5, did you say?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
we don't want
3.5
to move
for
the goalposts.
You're right.
Okay.
Too far.
Did you follow that at all, Nicole?
Okay, so just so I can understand, caliper is the sort of diameter that you get
Diameter.
measured, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Diameter breast height.
I'm getting there, okay.
4 feet.
At 4 feet, okay.
Or thereabouts, yeah.
I'm sure that if I work with a professional, they will know
Oh,
all
yes.
this. So 2.5-inch caliper for the American dogwoods and 3.5-inch caliper for the sugar maples.
Correct.
Okay.
That's perfect. And then on the donation side, we've done it in different ways. Some people have actually gone in and paid a tree person, and then they just sit there. The benefit to you is you don't have to pay to plant them. So you could just buy them on, credit, and then the town can pull it. Other more established, the institutions sometimes will just say that, they owe us whatever, 20 trees, like the golf course. We've got a pretty large inventory with the golf course. So we can we don't have a uniform practice in that
Okay.
area. It's really you may want to close your books on it, so it might be better off for you, or you could make a we've actually had people pay money, and we have a tree fund. In fact, for the rest of the commission, I showed Steve, I actually did bring our accounting with me tonight.
Oh, great.
So we actually do have funds. So, and I don't know what the cost is, we've bounced on that one too. It was like $400 a tree.
But at one point it was 500, wasn't
Right.
it? Yeah, so.
Right.
No, like maples are less expensive.
What's that? No.
Well,
No way.
We
no
should be
way.
That's an inside joke.
The one with the green leaves?
no Norways, no Norways.
way, no way.
No way, no way.
John's favorite tree.
It is. I like anything that's green and grows.
But the other thing about having variability in your trees is that bird and animal life will be different. If they're the same, it's homogeneous.
Sure.
All right, so on a takeaway, what's the dollar cost?
I'm good with 400.
Yeah, let's say 400.
I'm good with that.
3 extra trees at 400, that's $1,200.
Okay,
And then you'll put the other 6 trees in yourself.
okay. And what is the next step? Do I have permission to, if you grant me permission tonight, then I can go ahead and have landscaper
Yes.
plant? Or do I need to have approval to do anything else? Okay, great.
You're good.
Do I need to report back after it's finished?
Bring in pictures.
Okay,
Yes, please.
okay, great.
And not till September or October. You don't want to plant trees in August.
Okay.
Right.
Have it
Very
done,
important.
have it done by Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before the ground freezes,
Okay.
Anything else?
which can happen.
Any questions, comments from abutters, members of the public? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much,
for coming
Nicole.
in.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Nicole.
being so
Yep.
cooperative.
Good night now.
What did I do with my agenda? I just buried it. All right, next on the agenda is number 5, notice of intent, 1072 Brush Hill Road. What in the world happened on that? We thought we had a good idea.
It was a great idea. It still is a good idea, but
We have nobody's coming in tonight, is that correct?
That's correct.
But we did get communications today.
yes,
And John, just for the public's benefit,
You
you
know,
want to
I was-
explain? Yeah,
I will, I was just trying to
sure.
from the engineer.
get to it from the
Mr.
engineer.
Collins.
And
That
Mr.
the-
Collins has a good reputation, does good work,
Yes, he does.
and I think he was in favor of it.
Yes, he was.
This is at 1072 Brush Hill Road. This is a failed septic system, and the homeowner came in with a plan represented by Collins Civil Engineering to put in a new and improved septic system, which we thought was a good idea. But then a better idea came up because he's right next to a private sewer that ties into the MWRA. And we had suggested that the neighbors, talk and see if this applicant could participate in the private sewer. And I think there were, what, 5 or 6 people that tie into it?
Correct.
Yes.
Something of that nature. And so everybody thought it was a good idea. And then they started to get out the sharp pencils, and we have from the engineer, and I'll read it to you, into the record. Be advised that after a substantial amount of research, interaction with the applicable abutters, an engineering opinion by myself, and legal advice, my client would like to proceed with the septic system and not a connection to the private sewer. Each of the applicable owners that are connected to the private sewer are demanding $5,000 each in financial compensation, plus all legal fees and easements to be covered by my client. These costs may exceed $40,000, not including the revised engineering, sewer connection, construction costs, and sewer tie-in fee. As a result of these factors, the private sewer tie-in is not practicable. On behalf of my client, I hereby request that the commission votes on the current septic system upgrade application. Let me know if you have any questions. And for the public's benefit, we actually have been to the site and did an inspection, and I think we're supportive of the move, because we've actually been there and seen it. Made sense, but the private sewer was a much better idea. But at $40,000 before you begin construction,
Right.
Minimally 40.
that's a lot of
Right.
money.
Yeah,
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is. So, sadly, I think, again, practicality is one of the factors that we considered, and I think that a $40,000 entry fee before you put the sewer in is too much to ask of any homeowner.
yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
So I think we're back to the original plan. I was comfortable with the plan when I saw it, number one, and when we were present and did the
Yep.
inspection.
And it's behind you on the board, should you wish to refer to it again. You have a
Alright.
house and a garage, and then the leaching field is over to the right-hand side, to the west of the house. Northwest.
Okay, right, okay. When you said right-hand side, that's what I was...
Facing the
thinking.
house.
Facing the house, so it's just
Right.
the leaching field is right here.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
All right. I mean, I was comfortable with the location when we were there on
Yes.
site, and it was a public meeting, we could have voted then.
Yeah, right.
But then this private sewer came up. So is there any,
And it came up on site,
it did, right, when we were there.
It was brought up here, I think, originally.
was it?
Yeah, one of the abutters came forward to,
Yes.
But it wasn't brought up by the applicant.
he wasn't aware of it.
Right.
All right, well, sadly, I think that we should vote for the upgrade of the septic system.
So moved.
So moved.
Any discussion? And I know there's no one here, but I have to ask the question. Any members of the public or abutters that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Seeing none, there's a movement. Is there a second? Right? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So we have our order of conditions issued, and Steve, that'll carry the usual
Yes.
boilerplate components.
Exactly.
No storage overnight, no refueling of equipment within the resource area. Jurisdictional area, including our buffer zone. All right, thanks. That's, next on the agenda is number 6, enforcement order at 166 Granite Avenue.
And I spoke with Joshua Spicer today, and he asked that it be held over to August 13th. They will have their wetlands person, they're finally back from overseas, and they will have their notice of intent for us by the end of the month.
This month.
Yes, the end of this month, that's correct.
Perfect. Then we can continue that until August 13th. Number 7 is the enforcement order at 50 Summer Street. Do we
And I
any
spoke,
progress on
I
that?
spoke to Land Planning, a Stephen Rye engineer, W-R-Y, yesterday morning, and asked him about it, and he said he would have it also for the 13th of August. So we
Good.
can look forward to that on the agenda as well at that time.
All right, were you going to say something, Arthur?
No,
Okay.
I just could.
Okay, next on the agenda is 693 711 Randolph Avenue. Thank you, Paul, for your patience.
You got some signatures too.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Now, what is the status? Any movement in the appeal process?
No,
Identify
no.
yourself, please.
Yes, Paul Holland, I'm the applicant.
All right, and for the public's benefit, we have done a site walk. We went out to the area next to the DPW yard, 693 through 711 Randolph Avenue, and did a site inspection. And there were some discussions there, and one of them that we should probably, it was a public meeting when we discussed it, so we ought to probably raise the question again. Have you had any further thoughts or insight into whether or not a MEPA review would be in order? And the reason for that is that you have a plan that your engineer says can be done. We think it's going to be very, very tight in terms of, I think you've got about a 2.5-inch area that you can exceed when you drop the foundation for the bridge.
2 foot,
2 feet.
2 feet on one side.
Okay. And hypothetically, maybe it could be done. I just think that, if you exceed that 2-foot width, and the project is stopped, and you then have to go to MEPA, and for the public's benefit, the reason for this is you're very, very tight on the 5,000 square feet of alteration of a wetland resource. And if you exceed the 5,000, then you need a MEPA review, and we had suggested.
A water quality cert.
What's that?
And a water quality cert.
Yes,
So additional state permit.
right.
That would be the trigger.
Yes.
So we didn't know if you had any further thought or insight into that issue.
Yeah, at this point, we have the plan where we're disturbing less than 5,000, and it's, I'm confident that I can execute that and build it with the way it's shown on the plans.
Okay. And then we had also brought up a couple of issues at the last meeting, the last public meeting. One is whether or not we needed a consultant as a civil engineer to see whether or not that could be done, whether it's constructible. And then something that's come up over the last, 6 years? And I think we asked back in the spring of 2014 for a hydrology study. And part of that study would be to do a kind of an alternatives analysis that would compare what I call the abutment bridge from I know I said pontoon bridge, but it's on pylons. So there would be a free flow of water beneath, it would be a concrete plank, I guess. So we wanted a hydrology study. And actually, I've brought this up a number of times, but today I actually brought the statute with me, and then our regulations. And the statute is Chapter 44 of the Massachusetts General Laws, Section 53G. And the statute's entitled Employment of Outside Consultants. And it gives the Conservation Commission the authority to bring on a consultant for us, and the applicant has to pick up the cost. Now, there is a proviso in the statute that the town has to adopt it, and in fact, we have a bylaw, but we also have regulations in the town, and the Milton Conservation Commission regulations, and I refer to Section 5 fees, and subsection H says, in addition, the applicant shall agree in writing, if requested by the commission, to reimburse the commission for the costs and expenses of any expert consultants, if deemed necessary by a majority of the commission, to review the submission, to inspect and report with respect to the property, which is the subject matter of the submission, and/or to inspect and report concerning the alteration and construction itself. I know that's hard to follow, but it's a regulation. In any event, so the regulation of the town is in conformance with Chapter 44, Section 53G, and I'm going all the way back to the spring of 2014. I know I requested, I don't think you were here, but we've certainly had the discussion a lot with Jim Burke, that I would like to have a hydrology study done, and I think, Hans, you had suggested an engineering consultant to see whether or not if this plan is actually constructible.
Yeah, constructability analysis.
Exactly.
So I would propose that we request that the applicant pay for our consultant. Now, we get to choose who the consultant is, but we're not going to go crazy. And what I suggest that we do is we come up with some alternatives. You take a look at them. This is what we've done in the past.
Yep, that's what I'd be looking for, is just kind of like the scope and the proposal. Just
Okay.
take a look at that before I okayed it.
Qualifications.
What's that?
Qualifications.
Sure, the qualifications, the cost, those are legitimate factors. And the scope of work. So in a general term, we should probably reduce this to writing, but in general terms, I'd like a hydrology study to see what the mounding impact is going to be of an abutment-type bridge with a culvert or two versus I keep saying pontoon, suspension bridge. No, it's a pylon bridge. It's not a suspension bridge.
Well, I mean,
Like a Thea's a Zachem.
it spans the area as opposed to
You're right.
mountain.
And the big concern for us, and I go way back, this is like the third project, and this one's been six years, is this area of land here. It's right around here. We had pictures of people in canoes. That's not true. A canoe here after a significant rainstorm in this area right here. There's a lot of water. And when we went on the site inspection just last month, there was a ton of water
You
here.
couldn't walk through there, there's too much water.
Yeah. So the concern is if it's flowing in this direction, which I believe it is. I know there's a split here somewhere, but most of the water is flowing this way. How much is going to back up and mound, and how high is the bridge? I'm sorry, how high is the roadway that's crossing the wetland in this vicinity here? So, and I know that's done in a very non-technical fashion, but that's really what I'm looking for, and I think what we're looking for. Where does the water go?
Yeah, and if I have it correct, all the new impervious area is going to be, there's a catch basin in the bottom left of the bottom building in that area, and then that's all going to overflow into that area that you just pointed out, John.
To the bottom right.
Yeah, actually, it's not just a catch basin. There are detention basins underneath the buildings.
Right.
That are going to be discharging essentially in this direction. Is that correct, Paul?
What are we talking
That's
about?
the way that's the flow
That's the flow,
currently.
right.
Yeah, what are we talking new impervious area?
You know what, I don't
Is
know
it
that
two
number.
acres?
What is it?
2 acres?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it's,
But that would be part of the hydrology
Yeah.
study, because the runoff calculations are very important, because we're losing absorptive capacity, and the water's got to go somewhere. So why don't we do this from our perspective, and I looked at Hans to do a scope of work on the constructability aspect of it. It doesn't have to be precise, I mean, those that we
Yeah,
would
no, I
look
can
for.
provide language on.
And then we'll come up with some suggested consultants.
I have another concern that could perhaps benefit from some consultant
Sure.
overview. I'm concerned about the pedestrian safety on the bridge. And my understanding is that the sidewalk that, as planned, is more narrow than what is recommended. And I would like to make sure that the sidewalk that is being proposed is indeed safe for the large number of people that are going to be living there and then walking across the bridge to access the store and the bus stop and the other amenities nearby.
I'll say, I'm only here for wetlands, so, you know,
It's relevant because
It affects the width of the bridge.
it's already been reviewed by the ZBA, but I'll,
Look,
you know, why don't you, if you could
this
just give
isn't
me
a ZBA
the
approval.
entirely everything you're looking
Sure.
for.
Okay.
You know, I'd rather respond to that than, you know, piecemeal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, then I guess the other thing that I had raised the issue, and I think you basically agreed to a traffic study because the traffic on Randolph Ave in the last 5 years has doubled in quantity and,
Volume and rate.
Actually, I'd just interject that
Exactly.
I didn't agree to a new traffic study.
oh, that's my,
Yeah, no, I don't
my
think-
mistake. I thought you had nodded your head to in agreement. At any rate, because there are two buses that go up and down Randolph Ave, and the particulates that come out of those buses are visible from 100 feet away. And as well, you'll be getting traffic stuck on the bridge at all hours because you can't get onto Randolph Ave because of the traffic. So all of that pollution going, the particulates going into the wetlands, there may be some other plantings that we need to do or some other design factor to mitigate the effect of all that pollution going on to the wetlands, which is right there, right next to the street.
Here, let me ask you this, Anna. It may be an issue with the ZBA, and I should know this because I read their report, and it may have been an issue with the HAC, which I should know because I read their decision. But is there talk of a traffic light? I know there's already one right across from the landfill access at the end of Reed Street. But is there talk about moving that to?
There's not a new traffic light in the proposal, no.
Okay. All right. And we recognize we have to be careful to tie this into the interests that we protect, the resources that we protect. But I think Judith has been pretty specific about what effect does the increased traffic have on water quality and air quality if there are particulates that are being discharged because of the increase in number of cars. And, you know, just like with the parking, is there going to be runoff, and what are the cleaning techniques to make sure that the water going into the wetlands is still clean? I mean, those are jurisdictional issues, so that they do tie in at some point. But we'll try to be more specific so that you have that.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay. All right, any other? Jerry? Never at a loss for words?
You've summed it up, John. Thank you.
All right, Hans, anything else?
Nothing specific at this point.
Okay, all right. Any questions or comments or suggestions from members of the public? None of whom are here?
I did have a thought. Is there anything about trash removal?
Yes.
There's something already on file.
There will be an
Right.
operations
Yeah,
maintenance plan.
Yeah, it's part of the operations and maintenance
Okay,
plan.
along with snow removal and stuff.
Yes,
Right.
that is there. Right. All right, hearing,
Just-
yeah, Arthur?
Wanted to suggest that the environmental studies as recommended would, from my perspective, be pertinent. It would seem that if there is traffic concern, that's something that the Conservation Commission should bring to the attention of the town's traffic committee and let it bear the responsibility of deciding whether or not there should be a traffic study, when, where, how, etc.
Well, again, it goes to jurisdiction, because we only have state interests to protect here. The municipality is basically trumped by a comprehensive permit. Now, I know the issue is whether or not the comprehensive permit is in existence because it's under appeal, but I think at this point, there is one. It has been appealed, but it does exist because it went from, albeit a 35-unit comprehensive permit, the Housing Appeals Committee bumped it back up to 90, so there is one in existence. So I'm not sure that the Town Traffic Committee, that might be a good source of information, but we have to tie it to an interest that we protect, and that would be the particulars in the air, whether there's runoff.
I don't disagree with that at all. Those would be the results that would apply environmental. But we also have to understand that this isn't a town highway. This is a state highway. So there may be state issues as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it is it's
Just for
state
confirmation
regulation.
purposes, how many parking spots would be associated with the 97?
There's,
Like
I think the
154?
ratio works out to be like 1.7, so I think that number's, that sounds right, 154. Sorry about that, I apologize.
I think that's it, yeah. And I know your issue is that the traffic on Randolph Avenue has changed, but I think the ratios are still the same. I mean, the number of people there
Yeah.
versus the number of cars.
Nothing's changed since the traffic study was prepared and peer reviewed and so forth, in terms of the scope.
Number of cars,
This is what they reviewed, this size project.
Right, I believe that's correct. All right. Anything else?
On the constructability aspect, as you all saw, we've got a hillside. And it's difficult to construct on hillsides, without any doubt. So a sequence will be really required, probably as part of the notice of intent from the contractor, rather than from the folks who are permitting this.
It's going to be a multi-step process. so
Exactly,
it's
exactly.
going
I'm
to-
just talking about what the sequence might be. Notice of intent, order of conditions, and then a sequence from the contractor, Gesundheit, in terms of how the contractor will build and stage and move soil and materials around the site. That's all. So that's way down the road. That's a year from now. I'm just, but giving you the idea that that's a really important characteristic for this particular site because of the steepness of the site itself. That's what I saw as a real thing to deal with on the site itself.
All right, because I think we have to
Understood.
get together as a subcommittee of one or a subcommittee for the scope of work, but, to work with you.
Sure.
Has it been determined, John, that there would be no blasting on the site?
I don't think there's a need for blasting. Do you know?
Yeah, we did, so we've done like test borings, and we don't think we're gonna need, we don't think there'll be any need for blasting, but I think it was one of the conditions, I believe, if blasting is required, we have to submit a blasting plan. I think it's-
There is a blasting bylaw in the town. And
what I read.
we've used our own sometimes, like we did with Mike Salamando, when he was up building off of Woodland Road. Was it
yes.
Stonebridge Road?
Stonebridge.
Stonebridge, right, when he was doing that. So we had our own blasting plan, but it actually mirrors the town bylaw. And understanding that it's a town bylaw, but the state has requirements too on blasting, because that does affect water quality and water
Yes.
levels and everything. So good, that's a good question. All right. So I guess the onus is now back on the committee to come up with a scope of work and make some recommendations and get some, it's not exactly the bid process, but we do try to get, some pricing on it so that nobody's shocked by it. And it's a legitimate factor to consider. All right, do you have any other thoughts or questions?
I don't know.
All right, fair enough. Then, you know what? The next item on the agenda is additional business, and I just ask you to stick around for one thing, because it actually relates to this application. And this is with the advice of town council. because Jerry Burke did miss a committee hearing on this particular application. And he went back and reviewed as the open meeting law requires in order to participate in a vote and a consideration. He'd have to go back and review. So we asked town council, how do we actually formalize that? And with his advice, I have a letter in my hand from Gerard F. Burke, who's seated right here. And it says, Chairman Kiernan, I, Gerard F. Burke, hereby certify that I missed the May 14th session of the Conservation Commission hearing in the matter of the notice of intent application submitted by HD/MW Randolph for the HNW apartments located at 693-711 Randolph Avenue. I have examined all evidence received for that session of the hearing, including without limitation a video recording of that hearing, which I viewed on June 26, 2019, signed this 8th day of July 2019 under the pains and penalty of perjury. Gerard F. Burke, is that your signature, sir?
Yes, it is.
I would submit this to the record. I did. It's available for you.
All right,
okay?
thank you.
Notwithstanding the run-on sentence.
All right. Thanks, Paul, very much. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming.
Any other additional business?
A little bit.
Okay.
Kathy Bowen asked me to go out today to 90 Church Hills Lane. Evidently, there was a request, a reported request from the building department regarding a proposed deck on the rear of the existing home there. And somebody thought there were wetlands issues nearby. So evidently, Mr. Burke asked our friend Scott Morrison of Ecotech to go out and take a look. You have some details in your package here. I looked today, and I agree with Mr. Morrison. There are no wetland resources within 100 feet of the proposed deck on Mr. Corcoran's property. Just wanted to put that into the record.
It's Mr. Corcoran's currently?
Yes, Mr. Joseph Corcoran
Okay.
is the property at that location. Mr. John Corcoran is next door, just to give you an idea of where it is. Okay. Mr. Morrison did a very nice job, etc. That was something that came in today, and Kathy asked me if I would bring it to you tonight, go out, take a look at it, etc. And I did. And I told Mr. Prondak that I would call him in the morning to tell him that as far as I was concerned, and hopefully as far as the commission is concerned, there are no wetland jurisdiction issues on the site.
We've actually been there
Okay.
as a commission, although it's probably been 5 years maybe. And actually, we were looking at that, if you're facing Mr. Corcoran's house at number 90, to the left,
Yes.
you'd actually be pointing towards...
uphill.
Uphill towards Adams Street. And there's a house on the corner that actually owns an old barn that's been rehabbed into another house, and there's a tennis court there. We actually did some work on the tennis court. I say work, I mean, we permitted some work there and a rehab of the barn. And so I know there's jurisdiction near there,
Yes.
but my memory is in accord with what you just said, that it's not on Mr. Corcoran's property.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number C, I guess it would be, letter C. We have a transmittal from National Grid regarding a spoils pile removal. First time I saw it was this evening, so I'm sorry I don't have the background, but they have some details that they provided to us. It should be in your packet there.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just letting you know, they self-reported. And we thank them.
I was shocked at, who dumped all the pallets there?
Looks like they've been there a while.
It does.
Yes. Yes.
And it's funny, it's kind of off the beaten track, so people don't go up there to see. There was one thing that I was concerned with, Steve, in this letter when I read it, and the first one was, there seemed to be an inconsistency, because in one thing that, I might be comparing the letter with the email, but there was an inconsistency between a licensed site disposal, and if they were going to move this debris to a licensed site disposal facility, that means it's bad stuff.
Not necessarily.
If they're just moving it to a licensed site
Not necessarily.
facility, why wouldn't you
Just
you move it anywhere? If it's just clean fill, you can move it anywhere.
Just to be conservative. If it's soil that isn't needed and has to go off-site, then we just take it to a licensed facility.
Right, exactly.
It's,
So it doesn't imply necessarily that it's dirty.
But why, but you don't have to take it to a licensed facility if it's clean. I mean,
there aren't
you're right, I
many
agree. You could-
options.
What's that?
There aren't very many other options these days.
Right.
If you can't
Yeah,
lose
but
it on-site,
this is on DCR land, isn't it?
sure.
So can't they take it to other DCR land and just plunk it down somewhere? If it's clean,
Yes, if DCR decides that they want
they
it.
want to do that,
Right.
yeah. All right, I was just concerned that, and the second time they said it, and I think I'm comparing the letter here to the email that was the cover for this, and I don't
If
think I
anything,
brought
I
that
would
with.
just ask them to provide a copy of the sampling results. So if it went to
Yes,
a licensed
right.
facility, they would have to do a couple grab samples and for verification. So,
Does that make sense, Steve, that we get
Yes, it
some kind of
does.
a,
Yep.
if there's a sampling test, that we get the results on it?
Yes, absolutely. Shall do.
Because I don't know why it ended up there. And I can't remember, I think what I'm missing is the cover email for this, because I think there was something in there that suggested that one of their contractors had taken spoil from some project and just dumped it there, which doesn't make any sense.
I didn't get that email either, so I will ask Kathy.
All right.
Okay.
It says here, soils generated from excavation of a trench associated with a second BGG site were being temporarily stockpiled within an
Right.
upland turnaround area off of the access road to the rear of the golf course. The area is within the 100-foot bordering vegetated wetlands as mapped, thus under the jurisdiction. So they're taking excavation from a trench at a second Boston Gas site.
oh, it's a hydrovac company, so it was,
No, that's the one that removed it. The hydrovac company they came in to remove the spoils, but I didn't,
approximately 40 cubic yards of clean soil were placed in this location on May 7, 8 by Badger Hydrovac.
Okay.
oh, is that the
That's the
email?
email.
That's the email.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Because I'm doing it from memory, okay.
Good.
I know they self-reported, and I know they corrected the situation, but shouldn't there be penalties? I mean, do we know who the guilty parties are? Should we be considering penalties of some sort?
Well, I think that's a fair question, and I think along those lines, I'm looking at the now graded site, and it certainly looks better, but what are they doing to plant it?
Right.
Well,
That was my
or
question.
prevent erosion and so on, yes.
Yeah, well, I think the grading was actually done to prevent erosion, but if they leave it like that, that's not a good idea to leave it like that. I mean, that's where the invasives are gonna land.
Exactly, exactly.
So maybe you should,
I will call Andrea Agostino at 40 Sylvan Road, which is where I used to work 41 years ago, actually.
Ask
40
her what the
Sylvan Road.
response from NHESP was.
Sorry?
Ask her what the response from NHESP was as well.
Right.
Does it require them to come before us with a notice of intent and what they intend to do?
they should, yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask her for stabilization plan.
That's great, but I think Jerry's question is a little bit different. and that
NOI.
is to formalize it.
I think also restoration, Steve.
Yep.
What do you think, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's their pumping station. And that's a mess. That's terrible. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I actually think the formal project would be good. And certainly the after pictures are a lot nicer, but it's not gonna stay that way.
No.
So there really should be a plan to plant something.
Okay.
Have them come in August or September and give us a planting plan.
August would be, I mean, the planting plan's easy, right?
You've got to get to the right people, though, to say yes.
Of course, but you know the right people, right?
Pardon?
You know the right people.
Not any longer. I'm still on leave, by the way, from that company.
Which one?
From, actually Verizon, which is at that location, 40 Sylvan Road.
Wow.
It's pretty funny.
So what else do we have?
A report on 131 Elliott. We should hear some more by the end of this week.
Hooray.
Okay.
And then the next step.
Kind of fill in the details, though,
What we should hear, a risk assessment report and results of the latest sampling round. And there should be a RAM plan attached if they're ready to go. And then the next step will be a meeting among the parties in town, as well as the builder has evidently been chosen, the contractor builder has been chosen by the owner presently. They are Pyramid Associates LLC from Newton, with a Mr. Stephen Higgins is the, either the owner or the principal of the company, just for your information.
Okay.
I will be invited to a pre-construction meeting that will be held by Joe Prondak, the building inspector. But,
And are there discussions of use limitations on the?
yes, there will probably be some sort of use limitation. I did ask that question today a couple of times to two different people. They both said yes.
And the reason for a use limitation is the presence of some contaminant?
Yes, some contaminant in the soil.
Like you can't plant
That,
tomato plants. as an
well, yeah, there'll be some use limitation, and the use limitation will be right on paper. We'll see what it
That gets
is.
clearly defined by the state
Exactly.
based on the risk analysis.
We will have a copy of the information the same time DEP gets a copy, hopefully, again, by the end of this week, as well as the building inspector.
All right,
I will be happy to forward it to you.
that'd be
All-
great. Thank
All
you.
327 pages.
I know, I just went through my stack of stuff in my office today, and I saw the one from last October, which we didn't get until January,
Right,
and that was,
yes, about the same amount.
yeah, okay.
I should tell you that 531 Elliott Street is finally looking very good. There's a little tiny area that's not growing back because all the water is coming down that driveway and going right onto the new grass, the newly sown grass in that lawn. But there are 6 large trees and 6 smaller trees along the brook. This is 531 Elliott Street again. That was a mess a year ago, and it's looking much nicer now. And one other thing that started up, they started site work this past week, last week, was 75 Edge Hill Road, the tot lot for Cunningham Park.
Oh, good.
It looks, they're doing a very good job, just
There's a,
That's
grading,
the area
site
right,
grading.
right near the pond?
Yes, yep,
so there's a pretty big soil pile that they've generated at the top of the hill.
okay. Have they not ringed it? They haven't? I will have to stop by.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thanks.
Taking advantage of our pool pass, pond pass.
There you go.
Right,
All right,
right. And that's all I have.
that's good. Look at the
Oh.
time.
One more thing, I just did travel down Brush Hill Road to 1396 Brush Hill. Do you remember last winter? There was some drainage issues, and where the drainage issue was covered by plywood.
Oh, yeah.
It was open at that time. Well, the plywood's still there, it's now closed to the surface. So, and I did send the Murphys a email today saying, have you found Number one, an engineer or designer, and number two, have you done anything regarding, because winter is coming.
Yeah.
So
So the hole is
is still there, there's plywood over it.
still,
It's a very large hole, there's maybe a 4x6 hole in the ground.
that's big, it's getting bigger.
Well, no, it's about the same size, but it's just, it's now covered, so I couldn't really see
That
that
wasn't safe when we were there.
right before. It's now,
It was
it's a
not
little,
safe.
it's a little safer, but I wouldn't, if somebody tried to drive on top of it, it's just off the road,
Right.
Little kids running. I
Well-
mean, if it's shifted, because it was a pretty wide hole.
Yes, yes, so, in any case, nothing has been done to my knowledge since. And there's a for sale sign across the way, I forgot the number. We went to look at the wetlands line on it. Literally, 13.
Mr. Hack,
Yes, Mr. Hack's property, there's a for sale sign there.
he's selling it? I thought he was building there.
That's what he told us.
Yeah.
Wow.
He did tell us that, in the field.
Things changing. For all types of reasons.
Indeed.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor? All right.
I
We're
see.
adjourned. Adjournment.
Steve?
We've got a couple things to sign, right?